In a world divided by factions based on virtues, Triss learns she's Divergent and won't fit in. When she discovers a plot to destroy Divergence, Triss in mysterious form must find out what makes Divergence dangerous before it's too late. This is my movie review of Divergent. Just to tell you guys in advance, this review is mostly going to be about Divergent, the movie, and not really about the book. But later on in the spoiler section, I will be talking about how the movie adapted the book. So after I read Divergent, I said to myself, man, I cannot wait for this movie. And after I saw who was in the cast and who was directing the movie, I said to myself, yep, that's a good cast, that's a good director, let's go. But after seeing the first trailer and the first clip that was released for the movie, my excitement went down a little bit. And the reason for that is because I thought that the first trailer was a little bit disorganized and it seemed like they were trying to put too much into it for some reason. And the first clip didn't do anything for me, even though it's a big point in the book. But just when I saw it for the first time, I was like, I don't know. But then more clips were being released for the movie, and they were getting better and better as they kept being released. And then I saw the final trailer for Divergent, and I thought to myself that it was a really great trailer. It was cut well, and it explained to people that hadn't read the books like what the story was about and everything. And the trailer didn't seem like it was trying to cram a bunch of like stuff into it. And after seeing Divergent with my dad, I have to tell you guys that Divergent isn't a bad movie, it isn't a great movie, it's just a good movie. The good points. So there are two good points that I thought were really mixed well together, and those 2 points are the acting and the directing. So the movie stars Shailene Woodley, Theo James, Kate Winslet, Jai Courtney, Miles Teller, and a bunch of other people that I can't name off the top of my head right now. And overall, I thought the cast did a great job with their performances, especially Shailene Woodley and Theo James. Now, I say especially Theo James because in the trailer, when I saw him for the first time and when I saw him in the scenes in the trailer, I said to myself, man, I don't know about this guy, like, he doesn't really seem that good. But he proved me wrong, because after I saw Divergent and after leaving the theater, I was like, man, Theo James was really good, actually. I thought he was alright with his dramatic scenes, but I thought he sold his action scenes because he made it seem like that he could kick your butt or that he could like really hurt you. As for Shailene Woodley, I thought that she did like a tremendous job with her dramatic roles, and I thought she did a good job with her action roles as well because like Theo James, she sold them. The person that directed Divergent directed a movie a few years ago with Bradley Cooper called Limitless, and I saw Limitless a few months ago, and after I saw Limitless, I thought it was a really good movie. And in Divergent, I thought that Neil Burger did a really good job directing dramatic scenes and the action scenes because he put a lot of focus on those moments. And I thought one of the best scenes in the movie was one of the dramatic scenes because it was really well directed because of how it was directed, and it was like acted like phenomenally in my opinion. And all I can say about this scene without spoiling anything is that it had Shailene Woodley and another female actor in it. And I thought that Neil Burger did a good job with directing the action scenes as well because he made it seem realistic that these young adults could possibly like hurt you or kill you and kick your butt. The next thing I want to talk about is the costume and production design of the movie. So the movie takes place 100 years in the future, and the costumes looked like something that you would wear 100 years in the future, and I thought that some of the props and sets of the movie looked like that they could be 100 years in the future as well, so those aspects of the movie were good. I thought that the writing was good. Not everything about it was good, but there were some parts that I thought were really solid because some scenes had really good dialogue from the book, and they focused on the scenes that were really important. And another thing I liked about the writing was that they made it believable that this could happen in the future, that this dystopian society could happen. The editing and pacing for the most part was good because scenes had the right amount of time just to tell people like what they should focus on and what they shouldn't focus on. And like I said, the pacing was good because this movie is almost 2.5 hours long, and it didn't really seem like it was 2.5 hours long. The final good thing I have to say about Divergent is the soundtrack that it had. The final good thing I have to say about Divergent is the soundtrack. I thought that most of the tracks that played with the scenes fitted perfectly with like what that scene was telling and showing us. The bad points. So my number one problem with Divergent was the writing. I know I said in the good points that there were some solid parts, and there were some solid parts of the writing, but overall I thought that the writing was bad. And I think the thing that was bad about it was that the writers were trying to emphasize some parts to make sure that we get that they're important, or to make us feel like a certain emotion. But really, when those parts came, it didn't feel like that they were important, or I didn't feel that certain emotion. So if I was someone that hadn't read the book, I would have thought that that part was like some throwaway information or something. Another bad thing about the writing was that, if I was someone that hadn't read a book, I would have been confused about who some people were. And by that I mean by their name, because it's like, you know who Triss's friends and who her family is. But it's like when a person comes up, it's like, oh, okay, I know that's her friend, but what's her name again? And the same thing goes with the people that are against Triss. It's like, okay, I know that those people don't like her, but what are their names again? Again, if I was someone that was going into this movie without knowing anything, I would have been confused about who some of these people were. The final bad point I have to say is that it felt like some parts were being rushed. I know I said it in the good points that the editing and pacing were good. I mean, they were, but there were some parts that felt like they were being rushed just for story's sake and for the rest of the franchise sake. And this again goes back to my point about them trying to emphasize something, because when they're trying to emphasize something that was important, they were like rushing through it. Or if they're trying to emphasize a certain emotion out of you, they were like rushing through that scene. So like I said, I saw this movie with my dad, and my dad gives it a 2.75 out of 4 stars, and I as well give it a 2.75 out of 4 stars. If you're a hardcore fan of the book, then you're going to notice changes in the movie, and you might be annoyed by those changes. But if you're just a regular fan of the book, then you won't mind those changes at all. And as for someone that hasn't read the book, I think you will like it. Alright, spoilers for Divergent the movie. If you haven't seen Divergent, if you haven't read the books for Divergent, then get out of here now, because I'm going to be spoiling what happens in the movie and what's going to happen in the future, because I've read the other books. So please, get out of here now. So I made a list, and the list doesn't have like everything that changed like from the book to the movie, but it's just like the big things that I thought were important, that they changed in a way, like that they didn't put much emphasis on, or that they changed completely in a way. So like I said, the major bad point about this movie was the writing, and let's talk about the time constraints first. Man, the time constraints really annoyed me, because I thought this movie could have been longer and should have been longer, but the movie studios want to put as many showings in the movie theaters as they can for this movie, so in order to do that, they have to have less time in the movie. But the thing that annoyed me was that they didn't put much development into Will, Al, and Christina. For instance, when Al died, like when he committed suicide, like I sort of didn't feel anything for him, because in the book, like you felt something for him, because you know that he was just a person that had a crush on Triss and was a friend of Triss as well. But in the movie, you just felt like that he was just a friend of Triss. And I think the reason that I didn't feel much emotion towards him was because he didn't have as much screen time as everybody else. As for Will and Christina, like, I don't know, man. Like, they didn't put as much time on their relationship as they should have, because their relationship is like what causes some character development in the next book, Insurgent. But in the first book, Divergent, you can tell that the relationship between Christina and Will was like a big thing. While in the movie, it sort of felt like that it was a write-off in a way, because they didn't put as much time as they should have, like to show like how serious their relationship was. Because when Triss kills Will in the movie, like again, I didn't feel anything really. Like, I didn't feel like, oh crap, like, Triss just killed Will. I just felt like, And speaking of Al and Will, I just want to get this out of the way, but didn't those actors that played Al and Will like look the same? And again, if I was someone that's going into this movie without knowing anything, I would have been confused about who these two people were because I couldn't separate them since they looked the same. Now let's talk about Molly. I thought that Molly should have been cut completely from the movie because overall she only had at least 5 minutes of screen time or something, and if you're not going to put a lot of time into a side character, then I think you should give that time to someone else who's more important than Molly. And I think you should cut her out of the movie anyway, since like she's not going to have anything else to do with the rest of the franchise since she's not in other books. And the other part of the movie that I thought got hurt because of time constraints was the death of Triss's father. Because the way it was shown in the movie, it felt like it was rushed and it didn't really need to happen. I thought the way the book gave it to us, like how Triss's father died, I thought that was a better version of what happened than what happened in the movie. My next complaint about the writing is the way the writers didn't push the PG-13 rating. Because they didn't really show how Eric and Peter were menacing. Well, I guess people can say that Eric was menacing in the movie, and I can agree with that in some way. But when I saw him in the movie, I didn't like really feel like that he was this like part of an evil presence. I just sort of thought of him as a jerk, really. And the same thing goes with Peter, because in the movie, man, they cut some stuff with Peter that I thought they shouldn't have cut it at all. And the thing they cut it out of the movie that I was mad about was the Edward getting stabbed in the eye. Now, I get it's a PG-13 movie and it can't show someone with a knife in their eye, but I think that they could have done it in a different way. For example, here's what I would have done. Like, I would have done, like, the scene is black, and then you hear the scruffle, and someone's like, turn on the lights, and then you hear the scream, and then the lights turn on, and Edward is on the floor with, like, his hand over his eye, and the knife is already out, so nobody has to see someone's eye with a knife sticking out of it. Yeah, so Edward is covering his eye, and blood is coming out, and the camera turns towards the knife on the ground, which is all bloodied. That indicates that someone stabbed him in the eye. And then when Triss is trying to help Edward on the floor, they could have done like some quick shots towards Peter to indicate that he was the one that stabbed Edward. I mean, that's what I would have done. Another scene I would have changed as well was with the kidnapping scene when Peter, Al, and Drew try to throw Triss into the chasm. Because they don't show Peter's face, and they only have him, like, say one line. And if I was someone that hadn't read the book, I would have been confused about, like, who these three people were. Well, except for Al, since we see his face. But again, it was confusing since, like, Al and Will, like, the actors that played them sort of looked the same. Like, the way I would have done it was, like, either have, like, this, like, 10-second scene or something with, like, Peter talking to Al or something, or have, like, during when they're having the struggle, have Triss pull Al's mask and Peter's mask as well, so that the audience knows that, like, Peter is this, like, menacing person. And speaking of the kidnapping scene, they changed the timeline of the book. Because you know how when Triss goes to see Caleb at Erudite headquarters or something? If I'm not mistaken, that happens after the kidnapping scene. But in the movie, what happens is that Triss goes to see Caleb at Erudite headquarters first, and then Triss goes back to Dauntless headquarters and gets kidnapped. And that really annoyed me in the movie because, like, why do you have to change that? Like, you don't really need to change that. Like, it was perfect the way it was done in the book. And the other thing is that it was a little bit illogical. Like, it didn't make sense. Because how did Peter, Al, and Drew know that Triss was coming back in the first place? Because Triss leaves Dauntless headquarters, goes to Erudite, and then comes back. But it's like, how did they know that she was coming back at that certain time, at that, like, moment? Alright, let's talk about the cuts in the movie. So, let's get this one out of the way first. Uriah isn't in the movie. The first time I heard that Uriah was in the movie was, a few months before, I went to see the movie. Like, I was looking at the cast list and I didn't see Uriah. I was like, where's Uriah? Because as we all know, for the people that have read the final book of Legion, Uriah is sort of a important supporting character in the final book because of a certain event that happens. But I sort of get why they didn't put him in the movie, because there were already too many characters and there were already too many events that were happening in order to put him in the book. But I've heard that they're going to put him in Insurgent next year, so that's a plus, I guess. Another part they cut out of the movie was Visiting Day. When I was reading the book, I thought that that part was really cool, Visiting Day, because it really showed like how the families were reacting when they met with their children for the first time ever since they changed or are becoming initiates. And I thought that that could have been a really good emotional scene in the movie if they decided to go that way, but it didn't, and that just made me a little bit mad. So the final thing I want to talk about is the hard drive. So at the end of the movie, Triss gives Janine a shot of the serum and tells her to stop the simulation, and Janine stops the simulation, and then Triss knocks her out, and then Triss and Tobias get the others and get on the train, and that's the end of the movie, and that's the way to the book, and I was like, okay, that's cool. But the thing I was a little bit confused about was that, well, where's the hard drive? What's going on here? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the hard drive an important part in Insurgent? Because that's the thing that they're like fighting over like throughout the entire time in Insurgent, because of the information that's on the hard drive. So it's going to be interesting, like, what they're going to do in Insurgent without the hard drive. Like, what are they going to do? Like, what are the writers going to do? Like, replace the hard drive. So that was my review of Divergent. Hope you guys like it. I'm sorry if I ranted on a little bit too long, but that's how I am. And other than that, that's it.